Ethel Merman was one of the queens of Broadway, and she used her reign well. But despite her success, her Hollywood story was one of lies, deceit, and harsh criticisms. This is a story of Ethel Merman's mixed success. Make sure to watch the video until the end, and if you're new here, don't forget to join our wonderful community by subscribing to the Vintage Hollywood Archive channel. Ethel Merman was called the First Lady of Musicals, and it was a fitting nickname for this ultra-talented singer. There would be no proper way for anyone to describe this woman who had a powerful voice that could reach the distant parts of the theater at a period when stage or theater performance didn't use microphones. That feat was nothing short of impressive. No wonder they also called her the Old Yeller. But she didn't just yell. There was no way anyone could reduce the brassy, powerful voice to yelling. There was no beauty to yelling, but what Merman did was the peak of artistic beauty. Did you know that Merman didn't undergo any form of training? Everything she did out of instinct and a brutal trial and error process. The songstress didn't even know to read music. However, by listening to a song a few times, she would master it. Her immense natural talent covered anything she could have learned formally. But it wasn't just singing training she didn't have. She never had much formal education, too. She was the person you wanted to discuss deep matters of state with. When she had her first big show with composer George and lyricist Ira Gershwin, George specifically told her not to even attempt to get any singing lessons. Ethel took this to heart and never learned. The two brothers had favored her out of other auditions for her show, raw as she was. They weren't the only bunch that wanted to work with her. There was a long line of famous composers who wanted her to sing their work. Igor Stravinsky, Irving Berlin, Stephen Sondheim, and Cole Porter all loved her. Porter even put her vocal range in mind when he wanted to compose. It was as if she was the only one he wanted to sing the songs he composed. Porter's composition had a reputation for being complex, but for Ethel, it was a breeze. So the skillful composer ensured that his phrases ended on Ethel's strength. But for all her immense talent and angelic voice, Ethel had a way with words that would make the Pope blush. She liked to swear, which is an interesting trait considering she came from a religious household where their life revolved around church activities. This didn't stop her vulgarity, and she didn't mind who was there when she was swearing. It didn't even matter where she was. She even did it on TV. Loretta Young, the host of The Loretta Young Show, made the mistake of inviting Merman to her show. Ethel struck her with offensive humor, and Loretta was offended. Loretta had had enough. She sharply corrected Ethel, reminding Ethel that she was on her show and wouldn't condone cursing. The host asked the talented singer to pay the $1 fine for swearing. Did you know that Ethel did? Rather than take the correction, she went ballistic. The singer cursed out Loretta Young, and the devout Catholic Loretta had to get into an argument with Ethel. This wasn't the only scandal the star courted. There have been rumors about how her sexuality swung both ways. The songstress reportedly liked both men and women and had a long-running relationship with author Jacqueline Susan. The two allegedly met when Ethel was dominating Broadway and when Jacqueline was just finding her way as a stage performer and advertiser. According to a source, the two started their relationship when Jacqueline was still married to her husband, Irving Mansfield. They allegedly didn't let this get in the way of their love. Despite multiple conflicts, the two remained with each other and tried as much as they could to hide their relationship from the public. At that time, such relationships were not as open as they are now. An insider described the legendary singer and the author as soulmates. When Jacqueline wrote her book, Valley of the Dolls, she claimed she based the Helen Lawson character on Ethel. The insider also claimed that when Jacqueline died from breast cancer, a part of Ethel died with Jacqueline. Although, other sources claim that there wasn't any form of romantic relationship between the delightful singer and Jacqueline. She had once declared love for Merman, standing in front of the singer's door, yelling, "I love you." But they said Merman didn't look at the author in a romantic sense. However, for some reason, homosexuals and drag queens seemed to enjoy Merman's work. Maybe it was because of some of the roles she did. They resonated, especially with the film Airplane. In that film, Ethel played the role of an injured soldier who was so traumatized that he believed he was a woman. The soldier now began to belt out a time, singing "Everything Comes Up Roses." Well, it is easy to see why they liked her. However, that didn't mean she too liked women romantically or was in any romantic relationships with a woman. So why that part of her life could be in doubt, her vindictive nature wasn't. It was unwise to cross Ethel. Those who crossed her didn't like the outcome, and one of them was the drunken man who kept on interrupting Ethel's performances of "Call Me Madam" on stage. The man kept yelling at Ethel, but she kept her cool until she couldn't keep it anymore. As she was nearing the completion of the show, Ethel angrily darted towards the drunken man, pulled him out of his seat, dragged him out of the theater, and tossed him out like a rag doll. After she took the man out, she returned to the stage and finished the performance as if she didn't interrupt it in the first place. We guess the man accepted that she was a madman after all. And that wasn't the only time Ethel was like that. As we said, she could be vindictive even if you didn't cross her. There was one time that the singer had some successful stage plays, collaborating with Cole Porter. One of them was Panama Hattie, and she hated her castmate, Patty Hutton. The reason for the hate was jealousy. It would seem that she was very on Hutton's talent and felt she was coming for her at the top. So with her jealousy, she created another scandal. The First Lady of Musicals asked that all of Hutton's songs be cut from the show. Mysteriously on open night, Hutton found out she didn't have any of her songs on the show. However, the producer claimed it wasn't because of anybody, but that Hutton's style didn't fit the show. It was a strange statement from the producer, but it didn't matter to Ethel, who had her way. But it wasn't all the time Ethel had her way. If she did, her film career would not be as fruitless as it was. Her journey wasn't a smooth one. Her marriages were certainly anything but smooth. There was one particularly interesting marriage. That marriage would put most hasty Vegas marriages to shame. Merman married Ernest Borgnine, and in a cruel twist of fate, the two filed for divorce separately after just 11 days. The two of them cited the same reasons. Borgnine accused Merman of being cruel, and Merman accused Borgnine of the same. When Merman wrote her book, it seemed she hadn't forgotten what happened between her and Ernest. The chapter that was supposed to detail her experience with the man was a single empty page with the title, "My Marriage to Ernest Borgnine." So we would never know why things went sour quickly between the two of them. However, we do know that it seemed he gave her a taste of her own type of humor, which frankly isn't the right kind of thing to do with a spouse. Reportedly, there was one time Merman went for a show. She got high praise from the director. The director called Merman a beauty, and according to Merman, he told her she had a face of a 20-year-old and a body and legs of a 30-year-old. Borgnine's reply wasn't the best, but perhaps from another person's mouth, Ethel would have appreciated the humor. However, it wasn't what her husband, who should be in her corner, should say. Trust Merman to reply with what was appropriate or inappropriate if you ask us. Still, no matter how tragic things were between her and Ernest Borgnine, it wouldn't be compared to the other tragedies she suffered. She lost her 2 children. Her daughter Ethel Jr. died from drugs, and her son from a shooting. The star never had time for her children because of her career, and life didn't give her the chance to make amends. Have you ever seen a person so unconcerned as Ethel? George Gershwin asked Ethel's mother. The singer had just had a breakthrough. She had just worked with George and Ira Gershwin on the musical Crazy Girl. She met the pair through luck, but it wasn't all luck. The star singer had been singing in theater and doing many live performances. It was during one of these performances that she met Vinton Friedley, a popular theater producer. He was the one who asked her to audition for the upcoming Broadway show, Girl Crazy, with George and Ira being the composer and lyricist of the show, respectively. When they saw her audition, they dropped every and hired her on the spot. Ethel hadn't done Broadway before, but when she stepped onto the stage, it was as if a goddess was upon it. She put everything she had into the performance, all her hard work, everything was about to pay off. Her performance was so gracious that when finished, the audience went into a frenzy, demanding 10 encores. The show had a whopping 272 runs and wasn't even the show she featured in that had the most runs. But more on that later. Critics felt glee at Ethel's performance. They celebrated her powerful voice and her singing style, and the newspaper The New Yorker praised her for being imitative of no one. It was high praise, but the singer wasn't always like that. There was a period when tried imitating other theater performers, and we'll tell you all about that period. It all began when Ethel Merman was born Ethel Agnes Zimmerman on January 16, 1908. However you ask this stage actress, she would tell you that she was born in 1912. The reason for her belief, no one knows. Ethel just liked to be different, but what didn't know earlier in her life was that she was going to be. Her parents were not Hollywood royalty. Her father was just a bookkeeper, but showmanship had always attracted Ethel. She performed from an early age. She would visit the local army camps and sing her heart out. On days she wasn't singing, she would go to music stores and listen to the records there. Then she would also go with her parents to see vaudeville shows. Those shows deeply inspired Ethel. She loved those shows so much that she tried to imitate the stage performers she saw. However, the potential she had far surpassed those she watched, and it refused to be reduced in quality. Imagine trying to tame that brassy mezzo-soprano voice that could reach the ends of the theater. But having talent didn't bring the work to her feet. The music gigs weren't enough to live on, so she had to work a day job. She began her day job as a stenographer, and after a while, she got a job as Caleb Bragg's secretary. Bragg was the co-inventor of the Bragg-Clydesdale brake. It was hard keeping up with both parts of her life, but she wasn't about to leave performing in nightclubs and private parties. Broadway and Hollywood was the goal, and she was ready to reach them no matter the cost. It was Hollywood that came knocking at first. The sexy actress met Lou Irwin, who was an agent, and through Lou, she got a contract with Warner Bros. After auditioning. The contract was for 6 months, but it allowed the actress to quit her personal secretary job. Unfortunately, the contract also denied her another crucial part of her life. She couldn't perform in clubs again. She was bound to Warner Bros. Initially, Ethel didn't care. After all, she would soon be featured in movies, but after weeks of being idle, her patience was worn out. She began to breathe on her agent's neck to help her break the contract. Irwin didn't break the contract. He did something even better. The skilled agent renegotiated it to allow his charge to perform in clubs while still bound to the studio. Finally, or so Ethel thought. Just as she had regained her artistic freedom, she discovered something that would change everything. She had tonsillitis. The doctors had to remove them, but the star stage actress was afraid. She felt it was the end of her career. Merman was certain she would be unable to sing afterwards. But what she discovered after the surgery was different. Those inflamed tonsils had been holding her back, and after the surgery, her voice was even richer than it was, and she soon had her much-craved breakthrough. She became a Broadway star, and soon Hollywood came back again. This time it was Paramount Studios, and they cast Ethel in a series of short musicals. After her engagement with Paramount and the Girl Crazy run finished, Merman decided she needed a break, and she took it, but work wouldn't let her be. Or should we say, money. As her one-time agent said, 3 things are important to Ethel. The first is money, the second is money, and the third is money. She loved money so much that she managed her own finances. George White, who needed Ethel, gave the star what she wanted and paid Vinton Friedley a hefty $10,000. George was desperate. His Scandals show wasn't doing well, and he knew only the best could save him. Ethel did save him. The show that was struggling managed to her 202 runs in the end. Ethel Merman had the magic touch, but not when it came to Hollywood. Her Hollywood career was quite disappointing, and it wasn't because she didn't try. Ethel was a hard worker, and she did all she could. It just didn't work out. She had an unpleasant experience with the film We're Not Dressing. The star singer had her part cut out of the film. Being a Broadway goddess didn't mean anything to Hollywood directors. She was a newbie compared to the other big names they had on the film, so she was expendable. So, despite some of her scenes getting removed, she remained patient. Ethel was mostly professional when she had collected money. Emphasis on the mostly. The actress only ended her tour in Chicago when she began to suffer throat irritation. She blamed Chicago's water for that. In one Broadway show, she tried to get her second husband, Robert D. Levitt, the man who she had her 2 children with, to be the writer. The reason she tried this was she couldn't memorize her lyrics. The musical was a dramatic one and not a comedy, which gave Ethel problems. But on a film set, she couldn't call the shots. For the We're Not Dressing film, she wasn't even the first choice. Bing Crosby tried to bring his wife in, and Ethel only got the part because Bing's wife couldn't continue. Worst was, even after enduring those changes, she didn't do well, and critics who had high expectations of her laid into her harshly. It wasn't only her film career that had problems. Her love life, too. She had a passionate affair with Sherman Billingsley, and the two went at it wildly and brazenly. However, Ethel decided she wanted more and gave Sherman a choice. Sherman was to leave his wife for her. She even tried to use money to influence his choice, but in the end, he chose his wife and family. Ethel tried to find her forever after, and she married a fellow actor, William Smith, but it all crashed and burned in 2 months. Then she tried Robert D. Levitt, a journalist. Robert had a drinking problem that later led to the end of his marriage with Ethel, but the couple had 2 children together before they divorced. Not willing to give up, she married Robert Six and gave up her career to be a housewife. Six didn't like this and wanted his wife to go back to the stage so her publicity could help his business. She resumed her stage performances according to his wishes, but Ethel struggled, and as if it wasn't enough, Six cheated on her with another woman. The betrayal ran deep, but it wasn't the last betrayal she suffered. Mervyn LeRoy tricked Ethel that he would help her star in the film adaptation of the Broadway show Gypsy. It was a lie, and it ended up being what Ethel called the greatest professional disappointment of her life. Despite her failure in Hollywood, the actress had a great Broadway career. She gave Broadway everything she had and reaped the rewards. She continued to perform even when she was older. When she began to have problems with speaking and remembering things, she didn't give up. She should have, as she soon fainted, and the resulting diagnosis was that she had stage 4 brain cancer. The cancer consumed her rapidly till she eventually died. The loud singer had quiet last days. If only she had taken a break and looked after herself, maybe she could have lived longer. Ethel Merman, the larger-than-life diva who sang her way into our hearts. But hold on tight, because our next video is about to reveal a secret double life that will leave you speechless. Click on this video.